And I call the member for Hughes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Pleased to rise to opportunity to speak on our ongoing inquiry to the banks from the House Economics Committee. One thing I'd like to comment about the Royal Commission that's been called, and I have some concern that many members of the Labor Party have given false hope to many people that will try and appear before the Royal Commission that think they can get some compensation. The entire problem, or the vast amount of problems that we've seen in the banking sector, is that simply our legal system does not give the victim of banking malpractice a fair crack. That is the fundamental problem. Someone that is in a business circumstance that has a dispute with their bank simply does not have true access to justice because of the high legal costs. That's why the most important thing that the Coalition is doing is establishing a tribunal that will somewhat level the playing field, that gives the opportunity to someone that feels as though or believes that their bank has engaged in unconscionable conduct or has engaged in misleading or deceptive conduct or has broken some contractual term of their arrangement, can take their dispute to a tribunal and have that dispute heard without undue cost to them. That is what will solve the problems, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'm sure when the Royal Commission finally hands down their report, that will be one of the strong recommendations that I'll make. But just getting back to some of the last bank hearings, one of the things that I have some great concern about is the banks have engaged in a form of political correctness to try and sort of shadow away many of the things that they've been doing. And I'll go to a couple of examples. First, it's the National Bank, and during the testimony with their CEO, Mr Thorburn. I asked him a question, I'll read out from the transcripts. You put out a press release in 2015 saying that you weren't going to loan any funds to the Carmichael mine. At that time, had you been approached for any loans for that project? Mr Thorburn said, no, I don't think so. I continued, but you put out a press release saying you wouldn't loan them the money. So what we had here, we had the situation where one of the large banks has put out a press release that they are not loaning money to a certain project when they'd never even been approached. Now that has to do commercial damage to that project. This is a foreign investor that comes into our country that has already spent billions of dollars, that is already employing hundreds of Australians in real jobs. And we have one of the big banks issuing a press release saying they are not going to loan to them, which damages their commercial reputation, yet without that investor even particularly approaching that bank. Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't think that conduct is good enough, and I don't think it is responsible, given the significant reliance that our nation has on foreign investment. And that was the National Bank, and they continued, Madam Deputy Speaker. Before Christmas, they put out what you could only describe as an eco-populist voodoo statement, where they said they will no longer finance any new thermal coal mining projects. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, surely it is the bank's responsibility to weigh up the commercial viability of someone that approaches them for the loan and makes a decision on that basis. The bank should not be making decisions on what is politically correct at a certain period of time. Now, the banks may well argue, well, there's no extra demand for thermal coal, but Madam Deputy Speaker, last year we saw thermal coal prices up over 1/3. We saw our exports to Japan of thermal coal jump 50%. We saw China's consumption of coal up 5.2%. We've seen the International Energy Agency forecast that demand for coal will increase between 2016 and 2022 by 300 million tonnes. We only export 200 million tonnes of thermal coal from Australia. And the International Energy Agency says that demand will increase by 300 million tonnes. We've got industry experts, Madam Speaker. I'll just get to those. A few industry experts saying about the prospects for thermal coal. We've got Mine Life's Gavin Welch saying there is a very healthy price outlook for thermal coal. We've got the New Hope Chief Executive saying we are seeing strong demand for higher quality Australian thermal coal in Asia, and that's what's driving the price. It goes on and on. There is simply no reason other than trying to appease a political correct attitude in this nation that the National Bank would put out such a statement. Madam Deputy Speaker, this shows above all why in this nation perhaps it is a very good thing to have a Royal Commission. And it just didn't stop there, Madam Deputy Speaker. They also went on, the National Bank, in this press release they put out, they talked about an orderly approach to a low carbon transition is critical to ensure Australians can continue to have access to secure, reliable and affordable energy. Hang on. Continue to have access to affordable energy? Do any of these bank executives actually open their electricity bill? Do any of these bank executives live in South Australia, where they have the highest electricity prices, not only in the nation, but in the entire world? And they put out a press release saying, continue to have access to affordable energy. Madam Deputy Speaker, this shows that the executives of the National Bank are clearly out of touch with what is happening in the Australian economy. It shows they are clearly out of touch with the economic needs of our nation going forward. To put out such a statement, Madam Deputy Speaker, defies belief and shows why the decision for a Royal Commission should be supported. But it didn't only finish there, Madam Deputy Speaker. We also had the same thing from the other banks. We have the ANZ Bank making a decision that they are not going to put out again a press release saying they are not wouldn't finance a thermal coal station if it had an emissions intensity of over 800 grams per kilowatt hour. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, how can the bank make such a decision? Surely it has to weigh it up on the economics and the investment parameters rather than setting these artificial limits. The same thing with the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth also put out a statement that they say, and I'll read it from the transcript. I understand the bank released, this is my statements, I understand the bank released a statement that they won't be loaning any funds or wouldn't consider a loan to the Carmichael coal mine in Queensland. But yet, again, they had no responses asking them for a loan. How can we have our banks trying to mirror some of this anti-coal rhetoric that we see out in our community, just trying to cover up some of their misdeeds to try and create some sort of feel-good feeling about some of their policies, Madam Deputy Speaker? Our inquiries into the banking sector will continue with the House Committee. There are still many issues that we need to resolve. But mostly important, we need to get the tribunal right. We need to ensure that if someone has a dispute with their bank, that they can take that dispute to a competent tribunal without the risk of being run over by legal costs and time. Because that is the current system that we have, where the bank had a dispute with someone and the person would say, well, I'll take you to the Supreme Court, and the bank would just laugh at them. It has been that mismatch of power in our legal system that has caused the problems in our banking sector. And I hope that with the policies of this government on our tribunal and with the input of the Royal Commission, that this is something that we can address so Australian entrepreneurs can go out there, can risk their capital, can try new business ideas, knowing that if something goes wrong with their bank, they have the right to a fair hearing in a dispute.
Thank you, Member for Hughes.